We saw a very impressive debut for New Orleans Saints defensive end Chase Young, who has major upside that can massively benefit the New Orleans pass rush. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints, is a senior writer and reporter over at Saints News Network. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, I want to take a look at how the running backs are being looked at and being utilized. Then I also want to take a look at the wide receivers. Will another wide receiver rise up to the top behind Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed? And if not, how should the New Orleans Saints address that? And I want to kick everything off by continuing our look at New Orleans Saints defensive end Chase Young, who was very, very impressive in his debut against the for New Orleans Saints in training camp in their first day of padded practices. But I want to take a look more specifically at how he can benefit the team's pass rush. We appreciate you very much, as always, for making us your first listen of the day every day and for being everydayers here on the show, which is a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. In today's episode, brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel is making sure that sports never stop sporting. Head over to FanDuel.com today because they're giving out free boosts and bonuses to all customers all summer long. So make sure you go check them out at FanDuel.com to get started. Chase Young had an impressive debut, winning 2 of the 3 reps that he was giving during the first day of padded practices for the New Orleans Saints. That was a very good thing to see, but on top of that, it gave you the early glimpse at how it is that he can easily benefit this New Orleans Saints pass rush that really needs a shot in the arm after last season. Cam Jordan and Carl Granderson, those are going to be, your top options when it comes to the defensive line and defensive end. But now so too can Chase Young be a part of that rotation. So I wanted to look at 4 things that I think end up helping Cam Jordan, helping Carl Granderson, helping the Saints defense as a whole, and helping their pass rush. The first thing I want to talk about is him adding this bull rush to his speed game. He's always been a very good speed rusher, but his bull rush was something that I didn't expect to see, and he immediately had that ready to deploy here during Saints camp, immediately setting his example or kind of making that presence known the moment that they took the first snap, and he ended up getting his hands in on Landon Young and walking him backwards right off the line of scrimmage. He is a big and powerful dude that is also fast, that is also quick, and so adds a little bit of each of those elements to your pass rush. And remember, the Saints don't typically rely on the speed rush. And so it makes sense that this would be something that they're working with Chase Young. I watched him and Cam Jordan work on it together while they were working with Brian Young, the team's pass rush specialist, as they were running through drills on the sleds and things like that. And he's just taking in information, being a sponge from the veteran guys around him. This is the number 2 overall pick from his draft, still being willing to come into a new space and accept coaching, accept feedback from fellow players and veteran players, all of that. Really, really good mindset for Chase Young. And that is allowing him to expand his game. And we got our first look at it here at the padded practices at UC Irvine. His ability to play both inside and out. He is a big body. You can go and look at the video that I posted on X, I guess, on Twitter. I keep saying X, it's Twitter. Over on Twitter, at Ross Jackson Nola. And you could see him standing next to Cam Jordan, and Chase is big. And so what that means is that not only can he do this bull rush, have the speed, agility, and quickness from the edge, if they wanted to, they could bounce him inside. And because he's been a solid run defender throughout his career, that could be of interest to New Orleans every now and then. But more importantly, I think the time that becomes specifically of interest to New Orleans is when the Saints go into what they call their NASCAR package, which is their package that includes 3 edge rushers, where you could have Carl Granderson and Cam Jordan on the outside and Chase Young on the inside in certain looks, and then you can swap that and have Carl Granderson and Chase Young on the outside with Cam Jordan on the inside, and then swap that and have Cam and Chase on the outside with Carl Granderson on the inside. There's so many ways now that you could take advantage of that based upon, let's say, maybe a team has a second or third string guard in on a game, or there's weak tackle play for a team. However it is, if you want to take advantage of that on a easy passing, or not an easy passing down, but an obvious passing down, you're going to be able to mix and match these guys a bit to make sure you're maximizing your ability to be able to take advantage of those mismatches. So that's something I'm looking forward to as well. Another one is his presence. And what I mean by his presence is not just the physical presence, which we discussed here a second ago, but teams are going to want a game plan for Chase Young. They're going to want to know where Chase Young is on the field. And because of that, that's going to take some eyes off of maybe some of the other guys on the defensive line, not just the guy on the edge opposite him, but on the interior players as well. And so if a team ends up game planning to double team Chase Young, can that open up opportunities for other guys like Carl Granderson, like Brian Brzee, like Colin Saunders or Nathan Shepard, who's looked really good here throughout camp? Can those guys win the one-on-ones that they're then left with? And so the reputation preceding the games and making sure that, these defenses are kind of keyed in on a Chase Young, then bam, like that helps the rest of your offensive line or your defensive line. And then the other side of that is that what if teams start doubling Carl Granderson? What if teams start doubling on the interior and it opens up the opportunities for Chase Young to win those one-on-ones? So in any case, he allows you to be able to take advantage of the mismatches that will come because of double teams either at his spot or other spots on the defensive line. Last thing I want to look at is spelling the other defensive ends, because he would be able to come in and rotate with the Saints quarter 1 through quarter 4, down 1 through down 4. It's going to leave a lot of guys fresher towards the end of games. You can take Carl Granderson off for a couple of reps and let Chase Young go out there and not lose pass rush productivity. You can take Cam Jordan off the field and do the same thing with Chase Young, not lose pass rush productivity. And on top of that too, you also don't lose run game productivity, right? You don't lose the run stopper in that equation because Chase is a good run stopper as well. And so that allows you to be able to even give Cam Jordan run snaps off, Carl Granderson run snaps off, in addition to pass rushing snaps off, so that they're that little bit more fresher at the end of the game when you need a big pass rush in the fourth quarter, when you need a big pass rush to force an errant throw and get a takeaway late in the game to seal a victory or whatever it might be. Chase Young gives you the ability to be able to do that. Now, the big thing is he going to be able to stay healthy, right? Like that's always going to be the question mark around him and everything. But if he's able to do that like he did when he was in San Francisco last year, I think that these elements are the ones that allow you to be able to see immediately how he would end up impacting in a positive way the play of the defensive line, and in particular through the pass rush, but also not leaving alone or not leaving out the run game in that instance as well. Coming up next, the next thing I want to take a look at here are the wide receivers. Will another wide receiver stand out? And if they don't, how do the New Orleans Saints address this? We got that coming up for you as we continue on and wrap up today's episode. Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, where they're making every moment more by giving all customers a free boost or bonus all summer long. So that means that there's something for everyone, every day, all summer long over at FanDuel. It's a wonderful time to get in if you haven't tried it before, or if you tried it, went away from it for a little while with the playoffs ending and everything. Now you've got the MLB in full swing, no pun intended, the WNBA about to come back, the Olympics, of course, ongoing as well. You can even bet on the New Orleans Saints win total, 7.5. You think over or under when it comes to that. You can take a look at Derek Carr's passing yards, Chris Olave's receiving yards, and so much more for you to get in on over at FanDuel. So go and check them out today. Once again, they're giving a free boost or bonus to all customers right now. So there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Go and check them out today at FanDuel.com. Start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, family, continuing on with today's episode of Locked On Saints. Outside of Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, we've seen Mason Tipton, New Orleans Saints undrafted free agent wide receiver out of Yale, be the only one to really string together multiple good showings in a row on a practice-by-practice basis, and that might not be enough for what the New Orleans Saints are in need of at the position. We got that coming up for you here as we continue on with today's show. We appreciate you very much making us your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out Locked On Sports Today 24/7 stream, bring you all the stories from around the world of sports and the local experts that know them the best. Go and check it out over at the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 stream on YouTube and on the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, Chris Olave, Rashid, Shaheed have been impressive here throughout camp. Not just big plays down the field, not just big catch and run opportunities and things like that. It can't just be the big moments that make a player, right? You have to be consistently able to contribute in just about every area of the field. So can you contribute in the short and intermediate areas just as much as you can contribute in the deep areas? And I think that we're seeing more and more of that for Olave and Shaheed. Now, the good news for New Orleans here is that ideally with this New Orleans Saints new system that is going to be based on trying to elevate the playmakers that it has on the field and keeping those playmakers on the field, if you know what I mean, because we've seen the likes of the other practices in the past. If Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed are healthy, Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed are going to be on the field more times than not. And so that's not to say that a third wide receiver won't be available. That's not to say that the Saints are in a bad position if they do end up losing one of those guys for any amount of time or any amount of snaps, or they got to run off the field to tie a shoe or whatever. But what it does mean is that anybody that does kind of show up and rise up behind those guys needs to be taken at least mostly seriously. Now, I haven't given, to be honest, Mason Tipton all that much hype just yet. I'm going to start because he has been looking very good, but I'm still trying to figure out that line between, is he a training camp standout versus somebody that can really make the roster? And if he keeps doing what he's been doing, which is more than just the deep threat stuff, showing that he can be a good route runner, showing that he can attack the middle of the field, all those other things, then I think that you're probably going to see me be a little bit more willing to say, hey, this guy can make the roster. I'm not willing to go there just yet. I think a reserve player that's a lock for the practice squad is where he is right now. But as he shows more and more, does more and more, and is more consistent, that will begin to change. No problem. But outside of Tipton, the wide receivers have not stood out as much as you would like for them to, especially in a system that wants to elevate that talent and utilize that talent. So I wanted to go over the way that we have seen the usage of each wide receiver and what we would like to see from those wideouts. I'll start with Cedric Wilson, who I mentioned the other day is kind of emerging as a wide receiver 3. Not even an option. It felt like he was emerging as the wide receiver 3. You could see him getting more snaps. You could see him making plays, things like that. Well, things have started to kind of peter off since that a few days ago. And so really when it comes to him, he's been mostly utilized out of the slot, though not exclusively. He has attacked the middle of the field well. He's made some contested catches as well. So he's been a guy that's been able to go out there and be kind of a sure-handed target for your quarterback. And so that's what we've seen from him so far, and that's what his usage has been so far. The thing that we want to see from him now is just more consistency. Can he take that big practice he had just a few days ago and turn that into a series of big practices? I think that's going to be the big thing for him. A.T. Perry went 2 of 4 in some one-on-ones when the Saints did their first day of one-on-ones. He has not stood out as much as you would like for him to stand out, especially based upon what you saw at the end of his season last year. Those last 7 games, he was remarkable. He was solid, really, really good. And so you really wanted to see him bridge the gap and kind of carry that momentum in. That's why he's a breakout player candidate on a lot of people's boards, is because he has the talent, he has the skill, he has the momentum, and he has an opportunity. But so far, we haven't seen him fully taking advantage of that opportunity. In fact, we've seen him fall back to second and third team reps and stuff like that a little bit more than we've seen first team reps. Today, we saw a little bit more, their first day in pads, we saw a little bit more of those first team reps for him. So what we want to see from him is just better playmaking. Seeing him out there, making those plays, whether they be short, intermediate, or deep, pulling together those catches, and of course the contested catches, because that's what he did so incredibly well over the course of the end of the 2023 season. Now that pads are on, real opportunity for him to take advantage of his physical game. Equanimeous St. Brown is an interesting one. They actually didn't run any routes for him during one-on-ones because he was working with the run game on the opposite side of the field, I believe. And so he never took any one-on-one reps. And I've noticed that when he's on the field, it's kind of like the big tell that was going on last year with Lynn Bowden and Keith Kirkwood. Whenever he's on the field, they run the football. And at least if they're not running the football, the ball doesn't often go his way. I don't think I have him targeted once today. And I'll need to go back, but I wouldn't be surprised if I don't have but maybe a handful of targets, maybe less than a handful of targets for him in the passing game. So that's been my concern, is I just want to see him impact the passing game as opposed to, being a guy that could potentially get cornered into just being, the, run game guy or the blocker or something like that. So I think that's going to be a big piece of what I'd like to see from him moving forward. Stanley Morgan Jr. has been a good route runner and has found a way to create some separation for himself in the passing game. He's just had some trouble making the catches. And it's not all his fault. I mean, one of them, he made this diving, leaping, one-handed catch because Derek Carr had to really get it over the underneath defender who just took the right angle in the trail technique. And so even though Stanley Morgan Jr. did win the rep, I would say, when it came to running the route, he wasn't able to come up with the catch, but the effort was absolutely there. But then in other situations, like we've seen some of the drops, or we've seen him kind of get out contested by DBs and stuff like that. So I think the big thing that you want to see from him is just stringing together more receptions, more plays that he's able to finish with the ball in his hands. If he's able to do that because of his special teams ability and because of the value that he would have there, and then simply because of also, what he can contribute as a blocker, I think all of those things can end up going well for him. We talked about Mason Tipton. Jermaine Jackson had the ball punched out on him today, but he's made a couple of really nice catches. I think the big thing for him is just seeing that he can be more than a returner. If he's able to show that, then I think he can make a case for himself to be on the practice squad. Kevin Austin ran some really nice routes. He's kind of the one other ex-receiver option on this team. He ended up making a couple of nice plays today as well. I think the big thing is just seeing if he can do a little bit more downfield as opposed to just in the short area. And then Bub Means, we just want to see consistency. 0 of 3 in those one-on-ones. I don't believe he was targeted in team drills. And when he has been targeted in team drills, he hasn't really been able to come up with the play as much as what we saw during like mini camps and stuff like that. So maybe once he gets a little bit more comfortable and then, now that he's playing with pads on, maybe he can be a little bit more physical, all those other things. He's a very, very talented player, brings a ton of energy to the field, but just want to see him finishing those plays, much like Stanley Morgan Jr. So that's where we are there. What do the Saints do if none of these guys rises up to 3? I think you just have to figure things out in terms of how your scheme can benefit these players. I'd love to say go out there, trade for Brandon Ayuk, or trade or go and get another wide receiver, but it's unlikely that you're going to do that. It's unlikely that you're going to find another wide receiver that's going to be anything that's going to provide you any outlooks that are better than what you already have on the roster, all of that. And so the way that I look at this is see how the scheme is able to elevate these guys. It's not the raw talent of the players. It's the raw talent of the players plus the scheme. Can you take advantage of that? Coming up next, speaking of taking advantage, these running backs are taking advantage of all the things that the New Orleans Saints are asking them to do. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by friends at Game Time. I keep telling you about my Game Time experience because I had such a fun one. Went to the Angels game on Sunday on the Saints day off with John Hendricks. Got to see my first ever live Grand Slam and my first ever MLB game. But beyond the game, the positive experiences began once I opened up the app. I was able to see what the different views were from all the different pieces, from all the different seats. John and I were able to send some photos back together, back and forth to one another. You want to sit here? You want to sit here? He's like, what about third baseline? Found one and then picked up those tickets for $9 a piece and paid $18 as the final checkout. So no hidden fees, none of that kind of stuff. Took all the guesswork out of buying those tickets, made the whole experience very transparent, user-friendly interface, all that. I don't use anything else to buy not only my sports tickets, but any other events, concerts, comedy, theater, and much more. Go and check them out for yourself today. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. The New Orleans Saints running backs have really been taking advantage of this new offensive scheme and more than just the run game. And we can see it clearly by the way that they've been utilized. We appreciate you very much for making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget, we are your team every day, so we'll be back tomorrow, or actually later on today, with another live episode right after Saints practice. It'll be the second day of padded practices, trying to come back with more outlook, more evaluation on Trevor Penning and Taliesin Fuanga in particular in both the run game and the pass game. So make sure you come back for that and those big questions answered live later on today. So when it comes to the run game or the running back position for the New Orleans Saints, I know like a lot of the conversation has been around Kendre Miller not being healthy, having the hamstring injury, all those things, and not being able to be out on the field. Well, I get all that, and look, there's nothing wrong with that outlook or anything, but that doesn't need to necessarily be the focus of the running back position. What happens with Kendre Miller, who the Saints, I think it's fair to say, are a little bit frustrated with as of right now, with all these injuries, that is its own conversation. But what's going on right now for the Saints system is still looking very good. Alvin Kamara consistently involved, not only in the run game, but also in the passing game, not just running routes out of the backfield, but running routes out wide as well. All the things that you're accustomed to seeing from Alvin Kamara back in the day, it's all kind of looking like it's going to be back in the offense. Now, what they're showing us in training camp versus what they do in a season are going to be different things dictated by game situation, down and distance, all that other stuff. They're working these things sort of on scenarios, 40-yard line. How do we, these plays, 45, these plays, things like that. But in any case, it's hard to imagine the Saints not utilizing Alvin Kamara as much as possible today. Alvin Kamara actually, by the way, also off on the side today, seen speaking with Saints owner Gail Benson. So that was pretty cool to see. Clearly the relationship's still very good, even with the contract negotiations and stuff like that. I highly doubt, and in fact, 0% of me believes that they were talking contract, because your team owner is not going to talk directly to the player about a contract, let alone a general manager talking directly to a player. But it was still cool to see those conversations and see them kind of chopping it up over on the sideline. You think Gail Benson says chopping it up? I do. Next thing I want to look at is, or next player I want to look at is Jamal Williams. Jamal Williams has been involved in the passing game a little bit, but has also been utilized a lot more as a runner. And he has not been specifically utilized in the inside runs. He has also been executing some of those outside runs, those outside zone runs, and things like that. He looks like he's still kind of getting comfortable with what the Saints version of all this is, but this isn't foreign to Jamal Williams. This isn't entirely different than, or drastically different from what he was asked to do in Green Bay. Maybe a little bit less of the outside zone runs, but definitely like race to the corner, was involved in the passing game, all of those big pieces. And of course, is still being utilized strongly as a pass protector as well, which is a big strength in his game. So I would say that the role for Jamal Williams, while not entirely dissimilar from what we saw last year, looks like it's projecting to still be a little bit different here in 2024. Jordan Mims is taking advantage of everything. Anything that they're doing, or anything that they're asking of him to do, he's doing. And he's doing them well. He had a big run the other day on a nice cutback. He catches passes. He can line up out wide and run routes and things like that. I don't know that he's the strongest pass blocker, like you look at a Jamal Williams, for instance, but his usage has been a lot of outside tosses, sweeps, pitches, things like that, and a lot of pass catching. That's the way that we've seen Jordan Mims be worked, which is not entirely foreign from what we expected for Kendre Miller. Even though Kendre Miller was coming into the NFL with a lot more inside zone experience than outside zone experience, we knew that they were going to get him involved with his vision and his speed in the outside run game. And it looks like Jordan Mims has kind of stepped into that role a little bit more consistently now, with Kendre Miller being out of practice, but still would have been a part of it nonetheless, right? Even before Kendre was injured, we saw Jordan Mims doing these things over the course of OTAs, mini camps, all that. Kendre, by the way, again, present but not participating during Monday's padded practice. So we did see him off to the side. Finally, Jacob Kibodi. He's done a little bit of everything. He has been an inside runner. He's been an outside runner. He had that big cutback when he kind of instead of bouncing to the outside or banging up the middle, he bent back towards the backside of the run play, put a nice move on Isaiah Foskey in the process and picked up some big yards. But then on Saturday, caught a swing pass out to the right side of the offense and ended up putting a juke move and a little okey doke on another defender and being able to go and pick up some extra yards that way too. Dallin Holker crashing down with an additional block to help spring him. So I think Jacob Cabote is another one of those guys that right now is just really taking advantage of being given the opportunity to impact the run game in a lot of different ways. Remember, the New Orleans Saints, we used to talk about them utilizing the short passing game as an extension of their run game. And I think we're starting to see more and more of that here throughout the 2024 training camp for the New Orleans Saints. Last thing I want to mention is dog of the day. Dog of the day I'm giving to Chase Young. Not a lot of guys take 3 snaps in a practice and have everybody in the market talking about them. It's going to be the lead story at every show, every podcast, every article, every television sportscast, every newscast. He took 3 snaps and everyone is clamoring for more Chase Young. And ideally we'll get more of him all throughout the rest of the week, especially with the padded practices continuing for the next few days. There'll be padded practices today and tomorrow, day off on Thursday, right back into padded practices Friday and Saturday. So a whole string of these to really get to see what this offense and defense have and really get to see them be physical and go up against one another big time. So we got that coming up here throughout the rest of the week. But dog of the day today absolutely goes to Chase Young. We appreciate you very much, as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check us out over on Second and Saints. You can check out Locked On Pelicans if you want to know what else is going on around Locked On Louisiana. Jake Madison's got you covered there. And then Matt Moscona over at Locked On LSU. We appreciate you very much, making us a part of your day, part of your routine, for saying yes to me in the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure that you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you're momming them. And trust you, that nation. I'll holla at you.